Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Today's episode is a conversation with Chris Lewit of the Chris Lewit Tennis Academy and author of the book, The Secrets of Spanish Tennis. Chris is someone who I trained under for 4 or 5 years as a young junior player. So he taught me a lot of what I know about the sport, and really a lot of what I'm able to do here is thanks to him. We get into Rafael Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz in a conversation that kind of bounces back and forth between both of them and some larger, broader topics about the game and Spanish tennis, because as you could tell by the title of his book, and he's got other books as well, by the way, but of the book that we mostly discuss, Secrets of Spanish Tennis, Chris has dedicated a lot of his time and effort into understanding the Spanish model and traveling around Spain to learn about what the coaches in Spain at the biggest academies in the country have taught their students to create what was, throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, the premier tennis powerhouse in the world. So Nadal talk, Alcaraz talk with Chris Lewit without further ado. We're joined for the first time by Chris Lewit, the founder and head coach at the Chris Lewit Tennis Academy. My former coach, trained with Chris for a number of years. I always give him a lot of credit whenever I talk about where a vast amount of my tennis knowledge comes from. It's from the teachings of the man on the right or left of your screen. I'm disoriented that way. And Chris also has a book, The Secrets of Spanish Tennis, among others. Chris, long time coming. Glad we could finally get together here.
Yeah, Gil, it's good to be back. You're very kind with your words. I don't know if I can live up to these words.
Yeah, I think you can. I'm excited to get into Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz here.
Not going to let you down, Gil.
You never do. Chris, I guess let's start with, before we get into the meat of our conversation from a introductory standpoint, you've really delved into Spanish tennis in a big way. You've studied the coaching methods, you've studied the history. I mean, what was it that made you decide to go into that? Why did you, as a coach, decide to dive into Spanish tennis?
Yeah, so I get that question a lot, and I can give you the short, medium, or long version depending on how much detail you want to hear. But basically, about 15 years ago, more or less, well, I was at a conference. I was at a USTA high performance workshop, and I remember the moment. Jay Berger, I don't know if you're familiar with Jay Berger. He was director of men's coaching at USTA. He gave a talk, like a lecture, and they had taken a group of coaches. The USDA had taken an exploratory group to Spain, and they were trying to figure out what they were doing so well because they were kicking so much butt, and they were a small country, right? So he came back and he gave a lecture, and his what he summed it up, and he said basically they just work like animals. They work really, really hard, and he kind of in his mind, that was kind of it. Like, there was nothing really special. They just worked like animals over there. And I my curiosity was piqued, and I said to myself, you know what, there's got to be more to the story than that. And I ended up booking a flight to Spain and taking a training course at the Academia Sánchez Casal Academy in Barcelona. That was my first trip to Spain. I think it was 2006. And that's how the journey began. I took just a certification course there, and then I started exploring different academies there and visiting and trying to learn from the legends over there. And eventually, after many trips to Spain, it culminated in that book that you mentioned, The Secrets of Spanish Tennis, which has been very popular and I think really the definitive book on what they do really well in Spain.
Well, you talk about all those players kicking butt, as you said, and at the top of that was Rafael Nadal. And now, over a decade later, the butt is still being kicked. And 21st major at the Australian Open, 5-set win over Daniil Medvedev. And Chris, I mean, for me, despite all the things he did physically in that match, that was very impressive. Technically in that match, that was very impressive. I don't think he can win that without the Nadal mentality. And I know one thing that you teach at your academies is willingness to suffer, ability to suffer. How did you think that played a role in that match? And can you explain why is that an asset? Like, why does it help a player win matches to be able to suffer?
Yeah, so so Rafa is the prototypical Spanish player. He demonstrates many of the aspects that I wrote about in the book. He's in the book, I discovered that there are 6 quote unquote secrets, and one of them is suffering, the willingness to suffer. So Rafa demonstrates that to the highest level. I mean, we can talk about that match a little bit. I watched some of the highlights of that match, an incredible match. And he was, there's many times when you think Rafa, like a normal person would give up and pack it in. And Rafa always seems to fight, and he's always willing to suffer till the very end. And if you go to Spain and all the academies and coaches there and the players there are taught those values, those values of perseverance and suffering. So Rafa demonstrates that to the highest level. And he also is, I know we're going to talk about his game a little bit and the evolution of his game, but he also is a great example of many other aspects of what they do very well in Spain.
Why can't every player suffer like Rafa, right? I mean, it would be in an ideal world, right? Can't everyone just try as hard as they can on every single point, no matter what? But I know that's not the case. But as someone who trains juniors, what do you see gets in the way of that?
I mean, for most people, after losing that second set, I mean, they would have a lot of doubts, and they would. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different personality. So some kids might get angry. Some players might get angry. Some players might feel embarrassed or shame, or they might lose their focus with frustration. So every player is going to have a different, depending on their psychology, is going to have a different response to. But imagine that situation: 9 out of 10 top juniors will fold easily. They're going to have a very poor showing in the beginning of that third set, and they're probably going to pack it in. So right. Rafa he's just one of those unique people who has all the physical gifts, in terms of being an elite athlete. He has world-class speed, and he has world-class endurance and amazing hand-eye, and all these gifts, good power, very good racket acceleration, but he combines it with those mental strengths. That's why he has so many Grand Slams. That's why he's an unstoppable force on clay. And can you imagine winning that many Roland Garros titles? It's the most remarkable achievement maybe in any sport. It's incredible. It's just unheard of. I mean, back in the day, winning a few. When Sergio Bruguera won 2 Roland Garros, 93 and 94, it was the most amazing achievement in Spain. It was an incredible accomplishment in Spain. It was a really big deal because they had a long drought in Spain. They had a 17-year drought on the men's side for Grand Slam winners. So just winning 1 or 2 Roland Garros is incredible. But he's able to win so many because of his mentality, and because he combines that mentality with the great physical gifts. So with Alcaraz, Gill, is he going to have the psychological? Does he have the psychological gift? Sure. And because it's clear to me, just from watching him play, I've been following him for the last few years. I think I started sharing his Instagram posts like maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, like when he was just coming up 15 or 16. Because when I was traveling in Spain, there was word going around that, between all the coaches, I said, who's coming next? Spain had started to go down a little bit, and they were struggling. And I said to my friends there and coaches whom I know, I said, who's coming up next? And everybody said, there's this kid, there's this like 15, 16-year-old kid. His name is Alcaraz. You got to watch out for this kid. So I've been kind of watching him for a while. And I think he has those physical gifts that Rafa has. Mm-hmm. But my question is, will he be able to show up, bring the goods under when he's put to the fire? In those moments where you have to insulate yourself from pressure, in those moments where you have to come up with that shot in the big moment. If you saw the way he double faulted on match point against Berrettini, mm-hmm. I think that's right. you would know, Gil. You follow the matches closer than I do.
Yeah, I believe that's right. In the third set
That
tiebreak,
kind of, that those,
fifth
is that
set.
that's something Rafa would ever do? I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
he's clearly a great fighter, but we'll see. He's still very young, and we'll see if he can. I don't know if anyone will ever be like Rafa again. But what Rafa has is also very special. Is he's a lefty.
mm-hmm.
So he adds that. He brings that. That's something even more unique because it's a big advantage. I thought a lot of top-ranked juniors who are lefties. It's just a great gift to have if they're taught the right way.
Right.
But if the coach develops that. But unfortunately, many high-performance coaches just they coach lefties like they're righties, which is kind of, I think, a waste of potential.
Yeah. I think for Carlos, he's clearly incredibly motivated and very focused on the court for his age. He's always engaged. He competes very hard. But in that match against Berrettini, he was a little bit too pumped up and he was trying to make every shot too good. And Chris, where the willingness to suffer question comes in my opinion, is just with his shot selection. It's still very aggressive and he assumes a lot of risk sometimes when he doesn't necessarily need to, especially because he's such an incredible athlete, so strong in the legs for his age.
Yeah.
So I wonder if as he develops, he's going to learn to just be a little bit more patient and consistent and dial back a little bit.
Yeah, I think that analysis is good, but try to separate the willingness to suffer from being great under pressure because they're different. Right. And I have no doubt that he's willing to suffer. He grew up in Spain and he's trained at a great academy, Equilite, Juan Carlos Ferrero. I've been there. It's a world-class academy that's finally getting their due, by the way. I think it's wonderful because for many years they didn't get a lot of press. They didn't get a lot of attention. And this is like an incredible accomplishment. I'd love to talk about how difficult it is to take a young kid like 15, 16 and bring them up to even top 100 in the world, let alone now getting to closer to 30. And it looks like he's going to probably move up, into the top 10 at some point. Could happen this year. Incredible. It's just an amazing accomplishment. Every academy around the world, it's their dream that they could just get a kid like that, recruit them and develop them. And this is a very rare thing for an academy to have someone who breaks into the top 100. It's a really big deal. It's a really big deal for Equilite and for Juan Carlos Ferrero. And it really helps put them on the map. And I think it establishes them as a place that offers world-class training. They really weren't that well known. I mean, maybe in some circles, in high performance circles, they were well known. But I mean, I wrote about them in my book, but that was back, almost 10 years ago. And they're kind of out of the way. They're in a little town, and they're in JC Ferrero's hometown of Vienna. It's a little town in Alicante. So they're it's in the middle of nowhere. It's like in the farmland. So it's not near a big city. It's difficult to get there by airplane. And the fact that little academy, based on Juan Carlos Ferrero's private estate, has just developed this guy, and he could be number one in the world. Mm-hmm. It's really an amazing story. And that Juan Carlos Ferrero could identify him at 15 and 16 and say, this guy has the goods. This guy could actually, in a couple of years could be let alone he's like around 30 right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to say top 100 is an amazing accomplishment for any academy. We have JMTA here in New York. They've been trying for a decade now, trying to develop anyone who can make top 100. They still haven't done it. You have lots of academies all over the world pumping in lots of money into recruitment and grassroots and talent ID, and that this little academy in Spain did this. It's an amazing story. I write a lot for magazines. I should probably write about this amazing story. It's incredible.
Yeah. Is there anything Juan Carlos Ferrero does philosophically that you think is unique from the other Spanish coaches? I see Alcaraz, and he does have a very strikingly aggressive game. It's not a stereotypical Spanish grinder.
It's a really interesting question. It can take you into a lot of different tangents because he reminds me a lot of the way Juan Carlos Ferrero played, the Mosquito. I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you're too young, Gil, but I mean, Juan Carlos Ferrero was the man. They play very similarly in my view. I mean, I'm thinking back through my memory of Juan Carlos Ferrero and the way he played, but he had that same beautiful agility. You know, he moved around the court. That's what kind of like with the same grace and with the same agility, the way that Alcaraz moves, his movement is just is beautiful.
Yeah.
And JC Ferrero plays that way, and JC Ferrero had this great forehand the way Alcaraz has, where he had really good acceleration, and JC Ferrero had at the time he played with a stronger court position. He was one of the better Spanish players on hard courts at that time versus like someone like Sergio Bruguera, who played a lot deeper with heavier spin with more shape. Sergio Bruguera sort of is the prototypical Spanish, topspin dirt baller who played very, very defensively in terms of court position. And JC Ferrero from the Alicante and the Valencia region, so that's like 4 hours, 5 hours south of Barcelona. That area, for some reason, I don't know if it has to do with the coaches from that region, but they produce players with more conservative grips, more hard court proficiency, better court, more positioning closer to the baseline. That area produces pros and juniors that play a little more the way Alcaraz plays. And if you go up more to Barcelona, you see a lot more dirt ballers like with the Bruguera style. And Bruguera really pushes players back deep, from the baseline, the way that you see. I'd love to talk about like the positioning of Medvedev or the positioning of Zverev. So the Bruguera system is very much like defend, play heavy, still using the forehand, but like in a slightly different tactical way. And so to me, there's a clear delineation between the style in Barcelona, just as in general. Every coach is different. Every academy is a little different in their philosophy, and the style you see coming from the Valencia region, Alicante region, like Bautista Agut's a good example of that. Carreño Busta, a good example of that. The grip structure tends to be cleaner down there, and the court positioning tends to be a little more aggressive. And Alcaraz plays exactly like that style. His grips are very conservative, very, very good grips. He hits the ball real clean, takes the ball or can take the ball early, but he also gives very well. He has a very nice balance. Like you said, he needs to be more consistent. He can defend, and he can move back deep in the court. He has beautiful classic Spanish court position in the sense that he can go in and out. That's like a big thing in Spain, to be able to move in and out of the court. He does that really, really well. Like he'll defend, he'll take the return early, then he'll fade back and defend, then he'll move forward again and take advantage with his forehand. And he does a lot of inverted forehands, the drive invertido, which is a big thing in Spain. That's very classic Spanish, to use the forehand the way he does. So he's doing a lot of things classically, and he's doing a lot of things modern in terms of his court position, the way he attacks, the way he uses the forehand. So to me, he's like the prototypical modern Spanish style, the more progressive Spanish style. And if you see like the classic dirt ballers they hang back more and they play with a lot, maybe even with more RPM, the way Nadal used to play. Gil, I look back at 2009 Australian final between Nadal and Federer, because I knew we were just going to talk a little bit about Nadal. The way he played then is like much more classically Spanish. Right. Like deeper positioning, heavier spin, he loves the forehand. I mean, that's Tony's system. Tony's system is the inverted forehand, but I actually liked his technique better back then. He did a lot less reverse forehands, and he tapped his shoulder more with the follow through.
With the follow through was less over his same shoulder.
2009, he did a lot less of that.
Okay, interesting.
Tony didn't like that. Tony doesn't like that. Tony taught him to follow through. Right? If you see him when he warms up and when he's just hitting around, he taps his bicep, or he taps deltoid, or just below his deltoid. So when he was a kid, and like when Tony brought him up, he would always, that was his finishing point, to tap the side of the arm. And he was doing that a lot in 2009. And like you see, like now he's like so much reverse. And I wonder what can I say? He's winning, but I know that it probably keeps Tony up at night. But you know, what can you say? Because he's winning. He's Rafael Nadal. He's got 21 majors. But I mean, I would never teach a kid to reverse that much. I think it's a really bad habit. You know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's a lot of interesting things there. I love what you had described as the elastic court positioning, being able to move up for offense, to lay back. And it's so funny because I've been seeing Felix, who has been now working with Uncle Tony for coming up on 6 months, and Oj Aliassime has just started to use his court position in that way for the first time, and I think it's really helped his game.
Yeah. So in Tony's system, Tony is also very progressive, modern, like as opposed to like Bruguera and Pato Alvarez, who are very classical with a lot more defense. So, I mean, to try to understand Spanish philosophy in a nutshell, you have like Luis Bruguera and Pato Alvarez, who are like very much the old guard, like they're the godfathers of Spain. They're an older generation of coaching. They're both from Barcelona, and they teach a very defensive. I'm going to say defensive just because the corpus, they don't mind. They allow the player to go really deep. Mm-hmm. And Tony, and if you go down to Valencia or Alicante, Equilite, Juan Carlos Ferrero's academy, they play more aggressive with court position. That's a big difference in their philosophies. And Tony's, if you go to the Rafael Nadal Academy, I've been there, of course, they have a lot of hard courts, and they teach a more aggressive style. Tony believes in attacking. You know, Tony is not all about defense. He believes in a good defense, but I mean, Tony is the first person to tell you that he believes in the forehand is the most important shot in the game, and you have to have winning shots. You know, I took a really intensive course with Tony on an online training course, and I mean, one of his main thrusts was that you have to have a winning shots. You know, you have to be steady, but you have to have like, you know, weapons, you know, and not all Spanish coaches are focused that much on being aggressive, and especially with the court position. But yeah, the way Alcaraz goes in and out is really beautiful. I would use him for all of my students. I want all of my students to study his movement, and he makes it look so good because he has world-class speed, and world-class speed and agility and coordination. When you see it on TV or when you see it in live, it's just really special. It's beautiful. He looks like Spider-Man. He looks like Batman and Spider-Man combined. And he has. Yeah. It's really pretty. I've had occasionally I get a student like that who has world-class speed and agility, world-class multi-directional movement, and it's so cool to see. I had one kid. His dad was Olympics 100-meter, and this kid was so fast. Like, it kind of reminds me of, I have a few special kids like that, but it's very rare because some kids are fast. Like your average national ranked junior is fast, but this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like blazing fast. Like they could run like a 4.240, you know, in the football combine, you know. And Alcaraz has that kind of movement, has that kind of speed. That's why he's so cool to watch. Like if you watch him moving around, the way he can gain ground and like make up speed, like if he's out of position, it's just really, really special. And that's what all the pros that he plays, everyone he plays, they respect him and they see him coming up with like a bullet. And they're very, people talk about him, his opponent, people he plays, they say, this kid's going to be, you know, because he has that world-class speed. And speed on the tennis court is
kills.
Determining factor. It changes the entire game if you have that kind. But there's different levels of speed. You know, like he's at that highest level, and also he has that gracefulness and that agility and balance that they do so well in Spain. But that in and out movement is very. You see it all the time in Spain. He does it especially well, and he takes the ball early especially well, which makes him a little more of a threat on fast courts. You know, that kind of thing.
That's what I've said about Alcaraz and the position that I've had, and a lot of people are looking at him and Yannick Sinner and making that comparison and who's going to be better. And look, Yannick is a special ball striker, and it's going to take him very, very far. But I'm going to take the athlete. I'm going to take that genetic lottery speed because to me, you know, I grew up at a time, Chris, where I felt like the best four movers in the sport Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, and Murray were the four best players in the sport. And you had some other guys like a Gael Monfils who had other fundamental issues and holes in their game that prevented them from being at the very top of the sport. But for the most part, I look at the four best movers, the four best athletes, and they're ruling the sport. Am I oversimplifying that, or is that how is that a fair way to look at it?
Those guys that you mentioned, maybe not Murray, but Federer and Nadal, certainly they have that same speed, and that's why they have dominated. Maybe Nadal's slowing half a step, a little bit, but
For sure, yes, yeah.
But they in their prime had that same type of wheels, and so when you see that, you get really excited as a coach. Like if I see a kid who can move like that, I'm always looking for that. And the other thing I'm looking for is elasticity of how much power a kid can generate. If you want to know what I'm looking for talent ID, is the first thing I want is how what do they got for wheels, and then how much power can they generate when they strike the ball. Those are two like big priorities that if I'm trying to determine how far a kid can go, there's a lot of other aspects too. We talked about the mentality and the psychology, and there's the X factor. There's a lot of other factors, but those two, if you don't have those two, I don't think you can get to that Grand Slam level, really high level. You can still be good. So those guys you mentioned, I don't know Murray. Maybe I don't know if he has that same top level speed, but obviously he moves very, very well. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But Federer and Nadal, I think Federer has that speed.
And Novak, right?
And yeah. And Novak's the other guy. I tell my son all the time, these guys, but it's not just it's a combination of their multi-directional speed, but also their endurance. So those guys, especially Nadal and Djokovic, they combine this very unique quality from a physiological point of view. Like they can move very quick. They have very quick acceleration, stop and go, change of direction, but they also have this incredible stamina. So they don't get tired when the match goes, 4 or 5 sets, they always win. They don't fatigue to the same level. That's why Djokovic is so tough, and Nadal the same way. When they go, the longer the match goes, it's almost like Djokovic wants to lose the first 2 sets, and then he can just make a good show for the crowd, because he knows that if it drags on, his stamina is not going to drop as much as the other guy, and he's just going to pull him through. That's going to pull him through at the end. So you have kind of like the combination of someone who can run like a 4.240 with someone who can also run like a 2-hour marathon. Like you have this like combination of gifts, like these incredible gifts. And then we combine it with the mentality that we talked about, like the mentality, the psychological characteristics of a champion, and like good technique. Alcaraz has great technique. Mm-hmm. He has like beautiful, like straight arm forehand, like Federer. He has Federer and Nadal straight arm style is very rare. Beautiful straight arm forehand, backhand, like super compact, nice ATP backhand. Really he has good looking serve technique. His serve not very typical Spanish serve, not that impressive. This is a thing in Spain, like that continues for generations. Like you don't see a lot of great servers coming out of Spain. It's really a problem, but
yeah, it's something that has developed for Nadal, and I think Alcaraz knows that it needs to develop for him. He's got a live arm, the miles per hour is kind of there, but the spots aren't being hit as much as he would.
They don't work on the serve that much in Spain. It's unbelievable to me. This is one of the biggest flaws in the Spanish system, is they really don't work that much on the serve. You can have a 2-hour practice in Spain and still at the very end, maybe you got 10, 15 minutes of serving, and that's it. It's just not. Maybe some academies are now more progressive, trying to change. I've been talking about it for years. I said, if you guys could figure out how to serve well, to produce really good servers. Tony doesn't serve that much. He's always worried about injuries. So he limits his players to like 15, 20 serves, and then they have to shift gear. So part of it's like some coaches are really worried about injury. It's good to be cautious, but at the same time, you got to get those reps in to develop a really good, good serve. So I almost think that Tony is too cautious in terms of trying to prevent injuries. And then other Spanish coaches are just obsessed with the legs and the ground strokes, that they just like almost to serve as an afterthought. So this happens in many academies in Spain. So if you want to go to Spain and train, you have to be really careful where you go and make sure that you're developing your serve. Like when I took kids to Spain, like we do the whole normal practice, and then I would take them out and we would go work on the serve after, because they didn't serve. They didn't serve or return that much either, by the way. Alcaraz has a great return, which is,
He does.
that's it. But sometimes they don't return that much in Spain either. It's not a lot of serving. A lot of work on like the middle of the point. A lot of work on like ground strokes, movement, and fitness. You spend a lot of time on your fitness, but not so much time working on serve targets. That's why, Gil, a lot of players from Russia and Northern European countries, Eastern European countries, they develop their really good serve there. They develop their really good technique there, and then they go down to Spain and they learn how to run and play from the baseline, and it makes a perfect combo, perfect combination. And that's that formula that has been around now for decades, where you have bigger, and they're also bigger. So you get these big, like Eastern European, like Croatians and Russians, and they come down to Spain and they learn how to move and grind on the clay, and they become really tough to beat because they combine a big serve with the movement and consistency that Spain is famous for. That's a really good combination.
Right.
And sometimes the Spanish players, the players who are native to Spain, they don't have the fit that size. They don't have that strength, and they don't, if they grow up in Spain, they don't serve that much, or they play soccer for all their young years. They don't throw a baseball. And so you get a lot of native Spanish players with sort of like mediocre serve, okay serve. And then you get these players from other countries who migrate to Spain, and they have the big serve, and then they learn how to move and grind. It's really a beautiful combination. You mentioned players like Zverev and like Medvedev, and I thought of Murat Safin, back in the day. Murat Safin, for me, is the guy who sort of foreshadowed all of the big, tall guys, powerful guys who move well now in the game, in the modern game today. Murat Safin was doing that and dominating. And he had a great game. And there is a big Russian guy who went to Spain, learned how to play in Spain, did his finishing school in Spain, and then was very tough to beat. So he was a mental case. But if he had a better mentality, he could have won, probably 10 to 15. He could have been one of the greatest, But right. He had like he was a real hothead, had a big temper, but he was one of like 6'4", 6'5". He could move great ground strokes, great return, and a really big serve.
Yeah. I want to get to the height thing, but there's some other stuff that piqued my interest first, and the serve thing is interesting. I just want to throw out a couple of names. Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, Sarah Sorribes Tormo, like these are players whose serves are way behind the other parts of their games, and it holds them back. So you can definitely see what you're describing, Chris, in terms of the training that goes on in Spain. You can definitely see that manifesting on the court.
And it goes back many generations. I mean, it goes back to the original Spanish players who really just served. They just spun it in, and the serve was seen as just a way to start the point primarily. Mm-hmm. Maybe you kick it in wide on the ad court, and you just start the point. And that obviously today's game, that's not effective anymore. You have to have a big serve weapon. And I think still Spain is still trying to evolve from a training perspective, and they still haven't. If you see a player like the ones you mentioned, if you see a player coming out of Spain like that, you're like, wow, that guy moves great big forehand, really consistent. But man, his serve's kind of, his serve's not that impressive. That means they grew up in a part of Spain or an academy in Spain or with a coach in Spain who neglected their serve. That's usually what that means. They can't, and there's different pockets of, every academy is different. Every coach has a little different philosophy, but there's a lot of coaches who don't work on the serve enough in Spain. It's a problem.
Yeah. Well, one person who I think has learned to emphasize it later in the career, and Carlos Moya has come in and helped, just going back to Nadal. And, we talk about Nadal losing a lot of the speed that he had. I think that it's absolutely striking at this point. He's not moving nearly as well as he did when he won his first couple majors. And now he's found ways to win playing a different style. I mean, what do you think of his adaptation, his evolution responding to aging and losing the speed and just finding other parts of his game to work in ways for him where he could kind of counteract that.
Yeah, this is like one of the greatest stories, I think, in the last few years in tennis. Like his ability to evolve his own game and to adapt is incredible. Tony Nadal says the greatest gift, the greatest talent a player can have is the ability to learn. Talks about that a lot. And I mean, if Rafa didn't have, I mean, how many assets does he have? And then he has this ability to transform his game and to keep learning, to keep working on his net game, to learn how to take the ball earlier, to improve his court position and strike first more. I can't believe he pulled it off. Like I didn't, like a few years ago when everyone was sort of talking about it, like Rafa's going to, you know, Moya's going to try to get Rafa to play more aggressive. And like, honestly, I didn't think he could do it, because when you spend so many years playing a certain style, usually when you try to change it under pressure, like it doesn't work. I don't know how he did it. how could he do it? He's just one of those special individuals that, I mean, if I have a top national ranked student or a highly ranked sectional player, and I tell them, okay, we're going to work on, and they like to play baseline, it's going to be so difficult for me to get them to, like in a big tournament, to try to like move to the net, or it's just going to be such a battle for most kids. Most kids are not going to be able to transform themselves that way. It's just an amazing story. It worked. Like he's got 21 now. Like I guess it's working for him. I didn't think it was going to work, to be honest.
I think it's worked for a while, actually. Like if you look at the win percentages are still there now on the quicker surfaces. He's had some health issues, but I think the number one thing that's helped him, Chris, in my opinion, is how much he's attacking that first forehand. He's not holding back. He's not really worried about playing that first ball safe. You know, the serve isn't huge still, but whenever that return drops, you know, in a somewhat attackable place, Rafa's just punishing that first ball.
Especially the inverted forehand. Like he's so quick. He's still very quick to get around the backhand and rip that inverted forehand. And you're right. He's going for more winners with it. Honestly, I didn't think he could do it. I didn't think he could pull it off. I thought it was going to backfire. Like he wouldn't be able to win when it came down to the pressure moments. Like you just, because usually you fall back on the way you learned, like the way you grew up, the way you know, because imagine how many times he's been in battle and he had to like fall back behind the baseline and defend. And I didn't think he could do it. I see him serving, volleying now. I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, who is this? What is this guy doing? And he's volleying great.
Yeah,
it's a great lesson. I mean, it's a great lesson. I don't know. Like if I'm trying to teach, it's a good role. It's a good example for my students. It's a great lesson for students that they can adapt and evolve. They don't have to be stuck in a certain style of play. But can most people do that? Can the average recreational player do that? The average pusher or, you know, grinder, can they actually like learn these things? I don't. Maybe he's just such a special individual. Like it's an amazing story. I don't know how he's able to do it. I think the average person, if they try that, they could ruin their game. Like sometimes it's better to stay with a very simple game plan, a very simple style that you do well, and not try to dabble in like these other things, you know? So I mean, part of the lesson is like, it's a great example of being able to evolve yourself. But at the same time, I think people should be careful if they think that anyone can do that. You know, he's Rafa, but and what do you think, Gil? You think it's possible for anyone to just like go from and the other thing is he's like in his own career now, he exemplifies the sort of the classic Spanish way, and then now the modern progressive Spanish style, which is much more all court, much more attacking. This is basically the style of Juan Carlos Ferrero, the style of that Tony likes to see. I mean, Tony let him play back in the day, like more defensively. He was so fast, he'd get to everything, and he won a lot that way. But Tony really, over the years, has evolved to want to see players playing like tighter on the baseline with more weapon, you know, more attacking. They'll strike first, striking a little more first, which is not the classic way that players have trained and have played or trained in Spain typically over the years. But Rafa is sort of in his own career, sort of, you know, he demonstrates like maybe the old generation and the new generation, but it's in his own life, his own career himself.
Yeah. I think it's kept his mind stimulated. I think he's extremely passionate about training and tinkering and figuring out new things. And I think that kind of keeps him going. And I think the
Learn.
only right? Like the only
He
player who could do that.
He likes to come to the court and learn. He
Yeah.
likes to learn. So
Right.
maybe keeps him fresh mentally. I can't believe he did. Like part of me is like, these coaches are all wrong. Like they're gonna ruin him. He's never gonna win again because he's gonna try. It's like Villander. I don't know if you follow, like Mats Villander started to slice his backhand in his later years of his career. He started like slicing backhand. So it's like kind of like, I don't know, should he have done that, or should he have just stuck with? I guess it's always a question. Do you evolve your game?
He said it messed him up, Chris. Actually,
right. He's trying.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, or you need to take someone who's, or you take an aggressive player like a Maxime Cressy or someone, and you try to teach them how to grind or how to play deep, you know, or a serve and volley player. And can you really? Sometimes it backfires, and you can ruin a player that way. So I think it's really a double-edged sword. You have to be really careful. And when I saw that Rafa was, you know, going to explore that way of playing, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if he can do it. You know, but look, he won he won 21st that way.
Yeah, and I don't think he could be winning if he was in his old way, because he just doesn't have that physicality that he used to have. And right, that's the baseline. Isn't that the foundation of playing? Kind of shot tolerance, limit the mistakes. Like you need the fitness on the base level of that, and the speed.
I don't know. Maybe he felt his body, like maybe he felt it, like he just, like internally he felt his body couldn't keep that up. I don't know. He had to find another solution. And champions try to find a way, right? He wanted to win. And maybe he started feeling it as he was getting older. Like, I don't know if I can play this way for the next few years or whatever it is, the rest of my career. And he still wanted to win. It's an incredible story of how he was able to transform himself and win a really big event and get that 21st with a very, very different style. I mean, he's not, if you look at 2009 compared to now, it's a very different player. Very rarely didn't come to net that much back then.
I want to shift gears and end on the future of play styles in men's tennis, because we are seeing Medvedev and Zverev, and we talked about the big man who can move a little bit better, but they are almost, you know, they really are what you said. They serve bombs, but they also move, defend, keep the ball in the court, unbelievable consistency. They're kind of like huge serving grinders.
I love these. You know, I'm just going to tell you, I don't know where your listeners stand or your viewers, but I love these guys. I love this type of player.
Yeah.
Because this player to me can dominate the game. They're very tough to beat because they got the big weapons, but they can also move and grind. Like, to me, it's actually the way I would love to, if I have a kid who I'm developing, like, this is what I would love. Like, I feel I succeeded if I have a really tall, I love getting a tall player, whether it's a girl or a boy. If I know they're going to be big, like, it's very exciting to get someone who's going to be tall and potentially have a huge serve. Sorry,
I couldn't help you with that one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gill, but you are a great player and you worked hard, buddy. You had a good game. But those kids are really exciting, but I always want to teach them the Spanish way. I want to teach them to move beautifully. And I want to teach them to be consistent and learn how to construct points and be patient. And those guys that you mentioned, there's a lot of examples that, you know, on tour now that are very exciting for me to see. I love seeing that style. Like you mentioned Medvedev, Zverev. Who else do you like?
Hurkacz has a little bit of it.
We can keep going through. Berrettini, you have even like Kevin Anderson, very good example. That big guy.
But they're not on. They're on kind of a tier below from a movement perspective. Anderson and Berrettini. From a court coverage standpoint,
he's playing. He's not serving volley. Like, you see Maxime Cressy. That game's really interesting. He's 6'6", but he's playing a very different style.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to see that. You know, I don't want to say he plays wrong, but like the way he plays for a Spanish coach is outrageous. Is like a disaster. You know, like the way he tries to attack the net all the time is too high risk. It's too risky. And the way that like Medvedev plays, he didn't train in Spain, but I mean, he has a very Spanish mentality the way he plays. He goes deep, he defends, makes a lot of balls. He doesn't play heavy spin, but he basically, he might as well have grown up in Spain the way he plays. And I don't know where he did his junior years. I'm sure it probably wasn't in Russia, but who else?
I think well, Tsitsipas has a lot of size and also moves beautifully, but the difference between
He's not like
Tsitsipas
6'6", or what is he, like 6'3", 6'4"?
I think he might be 6'5". I think he's listed at 6'4", but he for some reason on TV he doesn't come across as big as he does live in person.
I believe it. All the guys are that big. I'm 6'3", and when I went to Futures, I just felt like small dude. I felt the game. I always wanted to be 6'6", like Todd Martin, or like, I wanted to have like that extra size. I'm so jealous of guys who made like 6'6", because like I made 6'3". I had a pretty good serve, but not like that. That extra height and the wingspan really helps. And now I see those, but back in the day, those guys used to have liabilities. They didn't move well. They were erratic, kind of like Isner, like guys who are like 6'5", 6'6", kind of played like Isner back in the day. Now you got guys 7 feet tall or 6'11" who are a little bit erratic. Like I think Opelka and Isner, I wish they could, and they move decent for big guys, but like same thing. Like what's the playbook on Opelka or Isner? Like Isner's going to be a little erratic. You're going to move him around. He's not going to be able to stay with you from the baseline. Like I love to see those guys move. Any big, powerful player, I want to see them moving beautifully. That's what they do in Spain. They do it really well.
So how does a Alcaraz compete with that? Because there was a second, Chris, where I was thinking, are we going to see another top prospect under 6'3" again? And I thought maybe there would be here and there, but Alcaraz comes in and he's back to kind of the 2000s, 2010s mold. He's 6'1", and that might be generous. I'm not sure, but he's how does he compete with the Medvedevs and the Zverevs?
Yeah, I don't think it stacks up that great, because I always feel that if you got a 140-mile-per-hour serve, you're big, got massive power, and you can move, I mean, who can beat you? So usually those guys have liabilities back in the day, but now they're moving so well. Like the way Medvedev moves for a big guy, to me, is like the dream. His technique's all wonky, like it's very unorthodox, but like the way, basically his build, the way he moves for like 6'6" or so, to me is like the dream. If you can get your hands on that genetic material, that's the way I felt for years. Maybe for a long time now, I felt like the pro game's moving that way, moving more to basketball-sized players. I just always felt that the game, and maybe I felt it personally when I was playing on the circuit, I felt like the players were getting bigger. And I don't know, I could ask like Mark Kovacs if he has the data to support that. Maybe it's debatable, but I really feel that I've always felt the game's getting bigger. The players are getting, and the females too, the females getting bigger. And now they're not only getting bigger, but they're moving exceptionally well. I think it's really scary when you play someone like that. I don't know if you ever played guys like that, but when you get like a big guy who also moves like Medvedev, it's like a panic and sets in on your side of the court, because they have that bit. Like Medvedev's got a great serve, actually very nice technical serve, but then he backs up with that beautiful movement and stamina, which usually the big guys don't have the stamina, they don't have the speed, so they're going to give you some free points in those situations. But now guys are getting more and more solid, the big guys. I just think it's an example of the game moving more to basketball-sized players. When I watch ESPN and I watch a pro basketball game, all of those guys out there on the basketball court, I just think, man, I mean, this is what the tennis world's going to look like. I just think that, and you're starting to see it a little bit. You see guys up to 6'11", and then you see a lot of guys 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and they're not just like big serving volleyers anymore. They can really move and play. I just think the more athletes I guess I'll predict that more and more athletes will get into tennis like that. And on the women's side, it's going to be more like, 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", maybe, bigger girls. So yeah, that's what I see for the game. And where does that leave guys like Alcaraz? I think they have a real tough they have tough days at the office, because he doesn't have enough firepower, even as good as his forehand is. If he's up against a guy who's a big dude, who's got a lot of juice, I just think that he can get steamrolled like a Del Potro, like someone who's like a lot of juice, it's going to be tough for him, but he's going to be great. It's no doubt he's going to be a great player, but can he be number one? Can he be like a solid top tenor? Is he going to end up like a David Ferrer? I don't know. He's done very well making 30 in the world. His journey over the last few years is the dream. It's every academy's dream, every coach's. It's incredible. If you just like follow his Instagram, like the last couple of years, it's unbelievable. Just like playing futures, challengers, bam, top 100. Now he's seated at the Grand. It's unbelievable the rise. And I'm sure he'll be a really good player because he's got that world-class speed. That's going to win you a lot of matches. But when he's up against those big dudes, like you asked me, like, I don't know, man. What do you think?
Well, I think Medvedev is a Spanish forehand away from ruling the world. And he just doesn't have that. He doesn't create very well. And Zverev doesn't create all that well. Sometimes he does, but then usually he doesn't. Either on the forehand. So I still think there's missing pieces. They have the serve, they have the movement, but then there's still that hole.
Yeah.
And I think Alcaraz doesn't have that. Alcaraz has, I can check almost every single box except really the serve is still getting there.
Yeah. I mean, he can still win slams. You could be 6-1 and still be great. I mean,
I believe
because he's got that premier speed. I mean, the speed is really special. It's not, because people need to understand, and like your audience needs to understand, there's fast and then there's like world-class speed. Like there's different levels of fast. Everybody on the tour is fast, unless they're like, like Opelka or someone really, but anyone who made the tour is got a pretty good speed. But this guy is like on another planet speed. And you can measure those things. I mean, you can measure that in the lab or on the track. Like these things are quantifiable, there's different levels of speed. So he's got that, and speed is an incredible weapon. So he's got that. We'll see how he does. I think again, getting back to his psychology, how good can he be psychologically, and we'll see who else is coming up. It'll come down to like the matchups, right? Like the Federer versus Nadal. We'll see if one of these big guys who can move well will have his number if he's going to struggle against some of those types of players. That'll be something to look out for, right? Down the road.
Yeah. Well, right now, trajectory wise, age rank, he's kind of way ahead of where everyone else has been. Really only you could compare him to Nadal in that way. And then after that, he's you'd have to go back to the 90s, right?
Because he's 18. He could still be playing ITFs.
Totally. Yeah.
But you think about like his age is just, and typically the trajectory in Spain, they don't usually play that many ITFs as Spanish players. So he's doing basically he's got a great coaching team back there. They basically guided him through the futures and through the challengers. Such a difficult road. They did it. It's an amazing coaching accomplishment. It's really special. They took him right through that, and now he's made it to the big show. And it looks like he's going to even go higher now. Like, this is an incredible accomplishment. Obviously, Alcaraz is doing all this, but the coaching team around it goes back to the coaching team around him with JC Ferrero's influence. But the other coach, the whole team there at Equalite, they're just doing a very professional job. You can see the way he's been guided, and it's just really, these things don't always happen like this. Like, you don't always just make that move. But I think it's a testament to the people that are around him who are bringing him through these levels.
Yeah, it's been very special to watch. More to come. Many more chapters to be written. And Chris, I've really enjoyed having this chat about Spanish tennis, Nadal, Alcaraz. I think the listeners will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, good stuff.
All right, thanks for coming on. We'll catch up soon.
All right, buddy. See ya.